Hello and welcome back to my channel Asian Programmer. So today we're gonna learn about the vectors. So vector is basically a container in C++ which is similar to like array. It is used the contiguous memory as well as the array, but there is like a difference that the vector can be of any size. You don't because in array, if you make an array, for example int array is with size of 10, you cannot increase the size of this array again. Yeah, if you want to add more values, then you have to create another array of bigger size like integer 20. Then you have to save that particular array in that value. Then you will delete the first array. That's how you do. But in vector you don't need to increase. You don't need to specify any size. If you want to specify any size, for example I specify the size 10, and now I realize that I want to enter one more value. So if I want to enter one more value 11 in there, I don't need to make another vector. I will just add another value and it will adjust automatically. That's the benefits of the vector, that it increases automatically. You don't need to specify again and again. So first of all, I will tell you how to make a vector. So in order to make a vector, you have to use the keyword called vector. Then in between this operator you have to specify the type. For example, integer, float, string, anything you want to make a type of the vector. That's it. Let's say we are making the vector called integer and name that vector called vec. Okay, we have just created a vector, but right now it is an empty vector. So in order to initialize the value, there is like a two ways. First, when you are creating the vector, you can just add this parenthesis, and let's say we are making the 10th size vector and initializing all the indexes of the vector with 0. Okay, you can do like this. Let's make a print function. So I will show you guys after every operation what are the changes in the vector, and we will name this vector again vec. Okay, in between we will just, there is like a similar, there is like a two way with which you can print a vector. First, which is like similar to array, like this, you will just loop through here till the vector dot size. With vector dot size you can get the size of the vector. That's it. And in between you will just have to do cout vector of I. That's it. You can print this way. And there is like another way with the iterator one. If you want to do like that, then what you need to do, you just need to do like this. You have to specify vector integer type, then you have to make an iterator of that particular type, iterator, and name that iterator, suppose itr. Okay, now you make a loop for itr which will start from the beginning of the vector. Itr is equals to vector dot begin. Okay, and itr will be work till it will reach vector dot end. Sorry. So the vector dot begin will give you the first index, and the vector dot end will give you the last index. Now you just need to print cout itr. Then in order to print the values of itr, you just have to write the pointer in between. That's it. There is like two ways to print the vector. Either you can do the traditional one which you used for the array, or with the iterator one like this. So I will just use the iterator one in order to uh, make it more simple for you guys. Okay, in the end we will just print the current size of vector. So we can see what is the vector size right now. Vector dot size, that's our print function. Okay, let's say we will call the print function now, print vector. After sending this vector, after we have initialized 10 size vector with 0 values. Look at this. After initializing all the 10 values, it says the current size of the vector is 10. Like this. Okay, now if you don't want to initialize when you're creating it, suppose you doesn't want, you didn't have the values, or you didn't want to initialize when you're creating it, you can do like this again. Let's say vector dot assign. There is like function called vector dot assign. In between, you just need to give uh, the size. Let's say we are giving the size 10 again, and I want to initialize all these value with -1. Let's give that -1 over here. Now after let's say print cout after assign function used. Now we will call print function and we send the print back again. Now look at this. First, we will assign all the 10 value with 0 and the current size of the vector was 10. After the assign function, we just change the value of that particular vector with -1 with just assign function. That's it. We assign all that values with -1. So next, after assign function, what we going to do, we will run another functionality of the vector called insert. Let's say we will type vector dot insert. Now what it says, that where you want to enter the value of the vector. Let's say we will want to change the value of the first index of the vector. Vector dot begin. Okay, now what value I need to give to that particular index? I will say 15 and semicolon, and I will just copy this and print after insert function used. Now let's run this out again. Okay, now look at this. After insert function use, 15 is insert before the first index. It doesn't replace, but it includes one more index. Now the current size of the vector becomes 11. We didn't give right the at first we specify the size of the vector was 10. But after inserting another value, the size of the vector increases by 1 without we mentioning that to increase the size of the vector. We didn't mention it anywhere, but the size of the vector increase on its own automatically. Okay, now there is another function called pushback. What we need to do, vector dot pushback. So pushback what does, it enters the value at it enters the new value after the last index. Let's say I'm entering a new value called 21. I will just copy this with I will just copy this over here and print this after pushback function use. So what I need to do now, I will run it again. After pushing back the 21 value at after the last index, look at this. After pushback function used, the 21 is added after the last index of the vector. Now the current size of the vector becomes 12 and the value is added at the last. So the pushback what it does, it adds one value at the last index after the last index of the particular vector. Now there is one more functionality called pop back. I will say after using pop back. So there is like called vector dot pop back. So pop back, what does pop back is, it deletes the last element of the particular vector. After we run this, you will see. I just insert a pop back function vector dot pop back and print the vector again. That's it. So what it does, after pop back function used, the last value which we have insert with pushback 21 is removed, is deleted, and now the current size of the vector becomes 11. That's how vector works. Now after this, let's say we will make another functionality called vector dot erase. Now we have to give the position of to erase the value as well. Let's say we have insert 15 in the beginning. Let's remove that. So how to remove that? We have to give vector dot begin. That's it. We will just do like this, and after erase function used, we will print again to show you guys now what will happen if we use erase function in that. Okay, look at this. After erase function used, the 15 is removed and all the values are remain as is -1. So the current size of the vector, it changes back to 10. So that's how erase vector works. For example, if you don't want to delete the first value, let's say we want to remain the 15 value and we want to delete the vector second value or third value, we will just enter plus and give to the index value. Let's say I want to delete second value, so I will just plus one more. So what it will do, it will not gonna delete 15 now, it will delete -1, which is after 15. So the current size of the vector becomes 10 still, but the second index -1 was removed. So you can remove also between the values of the vector as well. Like you will not restrict it to that you can only delete the first value or the last value. You can also delete the values in between the first and the last value of the vector. Okay, let's do another thing. There is like another function called vector dot replace. Now I will say vector dot replace. No, it's not like vector dot replace, it's like vector dot Emplace. It will just replace the value, but the functionality name is Emplace. My bad. I just write replace. Okay, what we need to do over here is that we have to give the index on which the value you need to replace first. Let's say vector dot begin, and I want to replace 15 with like 64 now. And I will just print this after using Emplace function. Emplace function. After using Emplace function, we will just run this again. Okay, look at this. What I did, I just enter a new value in place with 61. If I do like this, in place plus 1 and do again, what it will happen, you can see. Now look at this. 15 was there, but there is like after first index begin, I left 15 over there and I insert one element ahead of it. Like on the second index, I enter another element and all the values are just pushed forward a one more index. One more value is added, but it was added on the second index, and the value of second index was entered at the end of the index, at the end of the vector. So the size was increased, but the one value is also increased. So that's how Emplace works. It will also add one value. So now after that, there is like a Emplace back function as well. We will discuss about this as well. Emplace back. So what it does, it will enter one value at the last. Let's say we will just enter this 20, and after this we'll just say after using Emplace back function. Now let's run it again. So look at this. After Emplace back function use, after Emplace function use, it was the value was like 64, 15, and this, and the current size of the vector was 11. Okay, but after Emplace back function is used, the value 20 is added at the end of the vector, and the size of the vector increases by 1. Okay, that happens. Let's say I want to we already get the size of the vector. Now let's say I want to remove all the values of the vector now. How can I remove it? I still want the vector, but I want to erase all the value in between. What I need to do, I will just write vector dot clear. That's it. Vector dot clear. After clear function used, we will print this again. You will see now all the values of the vector is erased and the size of the vector will become 0. Now look at the last instruction. After create function use, current size of the vector is 0. The vector is completely empty now. Okay, now there is like a swap function in the vector library as well. I want to discuss that with you as well in this lecture. Then I will just finish this lecture. Okay, let's say we will make another vector with integer type. And what I need to do, I'm naming this vector vector1 and assigning the values to it, like there is like a 2 index vector and I'm assigning values 5 to that. I'm making another vector integer and vector2 and I'm assigning the values of 2 index with 0. Okay, I make two vectors, vector1 with values. Let me print these two vectors for you guys. Print vector1 and print vector2 as well, and before that we will just cout vector1 values and then copy this and paste it over here, vector2 value. Oops, vector2 values. Okay, let's run it again. Okay, these are the two vectors. So vector1 value is 5 5, current size of the vector is 2. Vector2 is value is 0 0 and current sector size of the vector is 2. Now I just want to use the function called swap. So what swap does is, let's say I'm writing vector1 dot swap. In between I will just have to give the vector2. Now what this function will do, I will just print this again. Cout after swap function use. So what this functionality of this vector does, it will just swap the vector1 values with vector2 and vector2 values with vector1. It will just swap the values of vectors of each other. Now let's print both the vectors again. Print vector1, print vector2. Okay, and we have to write that again so we can differentiate vector1 values and vector2 values. Now run it again. Okay, look at this at the end. Okay, vector1 value was 5 5 at the current, vector2 value was 0 0. After swap function is used, we'll look at the values of the vector1. It becomes the value of the vector2. The vector2 value was 0 0, but now the vector1 value is 0 0 and the value vector2 value is 5 5. It just swaps the values of vector1 with vector2 and the values of vector2 with vector1. That's the swap function does. So that's it for the lecture today. I hope you will learn quite a lot of things about vectors today. So in order, if you want to make any contiguous memory container, if you want to replace array with this vector, that will be more efficient and more useful as well, because there is like a lot of functionality in that which will be helpful for you guys when you are coding for any projects or when you are going for the competitive thing. So that will help you guys if you use the vector in there. That's it for the lecture. I hope you like my lecture. Do like and subscribe my channel. Thank you very much. Bye bye.